The Nicomachean Ethics of Aristotle.
Read and presented by George Pitropogiannakis.
Book 3, Chapter 13.
Next, let us speak of perfected self-mastery, which seems to claim the next place to courage, since these two are the excellences of the irrational part of the soul, that it is a mean state, having for its object matter pleasures. We have already said, pains being in fact its object matter in a less degree and dissimilar manner. The state of utter absence of self-control has plainly the same object matter. The next thing, then, is to determine what kind of pleasures. Let pleasures, then, be understood to be divided into mental and bodily. Instances of the former being love of honor or of learning, it being plain that each man takes pleasure in that of these two objects which he has a tendency to like, his body being no way affected, but rather his intellect. Now, men are not called perfectly self-mastering or wholly destitute of self-control in respect of pleasures of this class, nor, in fact, in respect of any which are not bodily. Those, for example, who love to tell long stories and are prosy and spend their days about mere chance matters, we call gossips, but not wholly destitute of self-control, nor again those who are pained at the loss of money or friends. It is bodily pleasures, then, which are the object matter of perfected self-mastery, but not even all this indifferently. I mean that they who take pleasure in objects perceived by the sight, as colors and forms and painting, are not denominated men of perfected self-mastery, or wholly destitute of self-control. And yet it would seem that one may take pleasure even in such objects as one ought to do, or excessively, or too little. So too of objects perceived by the sense of hearing. No one applies the terms before quoted respectively to those who are excessively pleased with musical tunes or acting, or to those who take such pleasure as they ought, nor again to those persons whose pleasure arises from the sense of smell, except incidentally. I mean, we do not say men have no self-control because they take pleasure in the scent of fruit, or flowers, or incense, but rather when they do so in the smells of unguents and sauces. Since men destitute of self-control take pleasure herein, because hereby the objects of their lusts are recalled to their imagination. You may also see other men take pleasure in the smell of food when they are hungry. But to take pleasure in such is a mark of the character before named, since these are objects of desire to him. Now, not even brutes receive pleasure in right of these senses, except, incidentally, I mean, it is not the scent of hare's flesh, but the eating it which dogs take pleasure in, perception of which pleasure is caused by the sense of smell. Or again, it is not the lowing of the ox, but eating him which the lion likes, but of the fact of his nearness. The lion is made sensible by the lowing, and so he appears to take pleasure in this. In like manner, he has no pleasure in merely seeing, or finding a stag or wild goat, but in the prospect of a meal. The habits of perfect self-mastery and entire absence of self-control, have then for their object matter such pleasures as brutes also share, in for which reason they are plainly servile and brutish. They are touch and taste, but even taste men seem to make little or no use of, for to the sense of taste belongs the distinguishing of flavors. What men do, in fact, who are testing the quality of wines or seasoning made dishes, but men scarcely take pleasure at all in these things, at least those whom we call destitute of self-control do not, but only in the actual enjoyment which arises entirely from the sense of touch, whether in eating or in drinking or in grosser lusts. This accounts for the wish said to have been expressed once by a great glutton that his throat had been formed longer than a crane's neck, implying that his pleasure was derived from the touch. The sense, then, with which is connected the habit of absence of self-control is the most common of all the senses, and this habit would seem to be justly a matter of reproach, since it attaches to us not in so far as we are men, but in so far as we are animals. Indeed, it is brutish to take pleasure in such things, and to like them best of all. For the most respectable of the pleasures arising from the touch have been set aside. Those, for instance, which occur in the course of gymnastic training, from the rubbing and the warm bath, because the touch of the man destitute of self-control is not indifferently of any part of the body, but only of particular parts. Now, of lusts or desires, some are thought to be universal, others peculiar and acquired. Thus, desire for food is natural, since everyone who really needs desires also food, whether solid or liquid, or both. And, as Homer says, the man in the prime of youth needs and desires intercourse with the other sex. But when we come to this or that particular kind, then neither is the desire universal, nor in all men is it directed to the same objects, and therefore the conceiving of such desires plainly attaches to us as individuals. It must be admitted, however, that there is something natural in it, because different things are pleasant to different men, and a preference of some particular objects to chance ones is universal. Well then, in the case of the desires which are strictly and properly natural, few men go wrong, and all in one direction, that is, on the side of too much, I mean to eat and drink of such food as happens to be on the table till one is overfilled, is exceeding in quantity the natural limit, since the natural desire is simply a supply of a real deficiency. For this reason, these men are called belly mad, as filling it beyond what they ought, and it is the slavish who become of this character. But in respect of the peculiar pleasures, many men go wrong, and in many different ways, for whereas the term fond of so and so implies either taking pleasure in wrong objects or taking pleasure excessively, or as the mass of men do, or in a wrong way, they who are destitute of all self-control exceed in all these ways, that is to say, they take pleasure in some things in which they ought not to do so, because they are properly objects of detestation, and in such as it is right to take pleasure, and they do so more than they ought, and as the mass of men do. Well then, that excess with respect to pleasures is absence of self-control and blameworthy is plain. But viewing these habits on the side of pains, we find that a man is not said to have the virtue for withstanding them, as in the case of courage, nor the vice for not withstanding them. But the man destitute of self-control is such because he is pained more than he ought to be at not obtaining things which are pleasant, and thus his pleasure produces pain to him. And the man of perfected self-mastery is such in virtue of not being pained by their absence, that is, by having to abstain from what is pleasant. Now, the man destitute of self-control desires either all pleasant things indiscriminately or those which are specially pleasant, and he is impelled by his desire to choose these things in preference to all others. And this involves pain, not only when he misses the attainment of his objects, but in the very desiring them, since all desire is accompanied by pain. Surely it is a strange case this, being pained by reason of pleasure, as for men who are defective on the side of pleasure, who take less pleasure in things than they ought. They are almost imaginary characters, because such absence of sensual perception is not natural to man. For even the other animals distinguish between different kinds of food, and like some kinds, and dislike others. In fact, could a man be found who takes no pleasure in anything, and to whom all things are alike, he would be far from being human at all. There is no name for such a character, because it is simply imaginary. But the man of perfected self-mastery is in the mean with respect to these objects, that is to say, he neither takes pleasure in the things which delight the vicious man, and in fact rather dislikes them, nor at all in improper objects, nor to any great degree in any object of the class, nor is he pained at their absence, nor does he desire them, or if he does, only in moderation, and neither more than he ought, nor at improper times, and so forth, but such things as are conducive to health and good condition of body, being also pleasant. These he will grasp at in moderation and as he ought to do, and also such other pleasant things as do not hinder these objects, and are not unseemly or disproportionate to his means, because he that should grasp at such would be liking such pleasures more than is proper. But the man of perfected self-mastery is not of this character, but regulates his desires by the dictates of right reason.